He woke up to the sound of his alarm clock buzzing and hitting the snooze button once before sitting up slowly. The small room he lived in smelled faintly of old wood and the faint scent of coffee from the night before. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm light through the dusty window. He rubbed his eyes and stretched, feeling the stiffness in his back from sleeping on the thin mattress. Today felt like any other day, but somehow heavier, as though the air was thick and he could feel it pressing on his chest. He got out of bed and walked to the small kitchen in the corner. There was a kettle on the counter and a few mugs stacked beside it. He filled it with water and put it on the stove. While waiting, he looked out the window at the street below. People were already moving, some walking briskly to work, others chatting with friends. He noticed a woman struggling with a heavy bag, a child chasing a stray dog, and a man trying to catch a bus. The world seemed alive, busy, and he felt small in comparison, like an unnoticed figure in a large painting. He sighed and went back to the kettle. The whistle pierced the quiet, and he poured the hot water into a mug. He stirred his instant coffee slowly, taking in the aroma. But it did little to lift his mood. Breakfast was simple, a piece of bread and a few eggs he had in the fridge. He ate quietly, thinking about what the day might bring, which was mostly the same as every other day. Work awaited him, but it was monotonous, a routine that brought little satisfaction. He often wondered if life was meant to be this way, moving from one day to the next with nothing remarkable happening. He finished his food, washed the dishes, and prepared to leave. Outside, the air was cool and crisp, a little refreshing compared to the stuffy warmth of the room. As he walked down the street, he noticed the usual sights: the corner store, the bakery, the bus stop. People greeted each other, some with smiles, some with nods, and some without acknowledging anyone at all. He felt invisible most of the time, like a shadow blending into the background. He had become used to it, accepting it as part of life. Yet today, something pulled him to a small store he had never entered before. The sign was faded, the windows dusty, and the bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped inside. The store was cramped, filled with shelves stacked high with all sorts of items from snacks to household supplies. The air smelled of old paper, spices, and a faint hint of something sweet. He walked slowly, his fingers brushing against the items, feeling the textures and shapes. Most of it was ordinary, things people bought every day without thought. His eyes landed on a small section near the counter with inexpensive items, things costing just a few dollars. He reached out and picked up a small trinket, something simple but oddly appealing. It was just $2, but something about it made him pause. He turned it over in his hands, looking at the details, and then placed it back down, only to pick it up again. It was silly to fuss over such a small thing, yet he felt a curiosity he had not felt in a long time: the cashier. An older woman with kind eyes noticed him lingering. She smiled softly and said nothing, just continued scanning items for another customer. He glanced around the store again, feeling a little nervous for no reason. He counted the coins in his pocket and realized he had just enough. $2. He hesitated for a moment, wondering why he cared so much about something so small, and then decided to buy it. He placed the coins on the counter, and the woman handed him the item with a nod, as though understanding something he could not explain. He tucked it into his pocket and stepped outside. Feeling a strange sense of anticipation, the street seemed a little different now, brighter somehow, though the sun had not changed. He walked slowly, turning the item over in his hands, noticing details he had not seen before. It was small, almost insignificant, yet it carried a weight he could not explain. He continued walking, observing the people around him more closely. The woman with the heavy bag had now managed to get it on her shoulder. She smiled at a passerby who held the door open for her. The child chasing the stray dog now had a friend running alongside. And the man who had missed the bus now stood on the next corner. Checking the schedule, he felt a strange connection to these moments, as though the world had shifted slightly, and he could see more clearly than before. The small purchase he had made, the trivial act of spending $2, seemed to mark the beginning of something he could not yet name. He found a quiet bench near a tree and sat down, looking at the item in his hands. He turned it over again, noticing the small imperfections, the way the light caught it. It was strange how something so small could draw so much attention, but he could not stop himself. He examined it as if it held a secret meant only for him. People passed by, some glancing at him, some not noticing at all. He felt a mixture of isolation and connection, a sense that he was both part of the world and separate from it. He thought about his life, the routines, the small decisions, and how rarely they seemed to matter. Yet here was a moment, small and quiet, that made him feel more alive than he had in a long time. The $2 spent were a minor thing, yet they had led him to this pause, this reflection, this awareness. It was as if the world had offered him a small gift, one he had not expected and did not fully understand. A man walked past, dropping a piece of paper on the ground. He picked it up and returned it to the man, who thanked him with a nod. The simple act felt meaningful, more than he could explain. And he realized that the world was full of these small moments, unnoticed but significant. The trinket in his pocket seemed to glow in his hand, not literally, but in the sense that it carried a weight he could feel in his chest. He realized that choices, no matter how small, had consequences, and that life was full of subtle connections waiting to be noticed. The day moved slowly, each moment stretching with possibility. He watched the shadows shift with the sun, the light dancing across the pavement, the leaves rustling in the breeze. People continued their routines, oblivious to the quiet transformation happening on a simple bench in a quiet corner. He felt a sense of calm, a pause from the constant worry and rush of daily life. The $2, a seemingly trivial amount, had given him a reason to slow down, to observe, to reflect. As the afternoon wore on, he decided to walk further, following a path he had never taken before. The streets twisted and turned, leading him past old buildings and new shops. Children playing in yards and neighbors greeting each other. Each sight seemed sharper, more vivid. He noticed details he had ignored for years, the texture of brick walls, pattern of clouds in the sky, the way people moved with intention or carelessness. He felt alive in a way he had not felt in a long time. And it all traced back to the small purchase, the minor decision that had drawn his attention to the world around him. He stopped at a small park, sitting on another bench this time. He took the item from his pocket and looked at it again. He thought about how simple life could be, how much beauty and complexity existed in ordinary moments. He realized that his days had often passed unnoticed, spent on autopilot. But today was different. Today, he was awake. The $2 had given him more than a trinket. They had given him awareness, a tiny spark of insight into the flow of life and the hidden significance of small choices. People came and went in the park. Some sitting on benches, some walking dogs, some chatting with friends. He observed quietly, feeling a connection to each of them, even strangers. Life was moving and he was part of it, however small that part might be. He turned the item over one last time before tucking it safely back into his pocket. It did not matter what it was or what it symbolized to anyone else. What mattered was the moment it had created, the shift in his perception, the quiet awakening that had begun with a $2 purchase. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, he stood up from the bench and started walking home. The streets were changing, the shadows growing longer, the air cooling. He felt a lightness in his step, a new awareness of the world around him. The small act of buying something so trivial had reminded him that life was made up of countless tiny moments, each with the potential to matter if only one paid attention. He walked with a sense of quiet anticipation, wondering what the next moment might bring, and feeling grateful for the unexpected spark that had begun today with a simple decision. He continued walking through the streets, feeling a quiet curiosity that he had not felt in years. The world seemed to hold more details than before, and every sound, every movement drew his attention. Children laughed in a nearby yard, their voices rising and falling like music. A street vendor was arranging fresh fruits, calling out quietly to passers-by. The smell of baking bread floated from a small bakery and mixed with the faint scent of wet earth from a recent rain. He noticed all of it, his mind awake and alert, taking in the ordinary moments that often went unnoticed. As he walked, he spotted a small alley that he had never taken before. Something drew him toward it, a sense of curiosity he could not ignore. The alley was narrow and lined with old brick buildings, their surfaces weathered and cracked. He could see plants growing from small gaps in the pavement, stubborn and persistent. The light was dimmer here, but he did not mind. He felt as though he was stepping into a place removed from the rush of the main streets, a quiet pocket where he could observe life more closely. He slowed his pace and moved carefully, listening to the sounds around him. The faint chatter of neighbors, the distant hum of traffic, the rustling of leaves filled his ears. Near the end of the alley, he saw a man sitting on a wooden crate, looking tired and worn. The man had a small dog lying beside him, and he was sorting through a few coins on a tin tray. He looked up as he noticed him, and for a moment their eyes met. There was no need for words, yet he felt a strange connection, a recognition of shared humanity. He walked closer and observed, silently curious about the life of this man who seemed so different yet somehow familiar. He could see the lines on the man's face, the roughness of his hands, and the weariness in his eyes. Yet there was also a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself, a resilience that spoke of many years of surviving hardships. The man glanced at the $2 in his hand and then back at him. Without saying anything, he nodded slightly, as if acknowledging that he understood something that words could not capture. He felt a surge of empathy in something else he could not name, a pull toward action, toward connection. He had no plan, no reason to intervene, yet he felt compelled to do something. He reached into his pocket and felt the small trinket he had purchased earlier. It seemed heavier now, carrying a new significance, as though it had become a bridge between him and the stranger. He decided to approach and asked quietly if the man needed any help. The man looked at him, surprised at first, and then smiled faintly, a small gesture that carried more meaning than words. They began to talk in low voices, sharing small details of their lives. The man spoke of struggles with work and health, the small victories and losses that marked each day. He mentioned how hard it was to get by with so little, how each coin mattered, and how sometimes kindness from strangers felt like a lifeline. He spoke with honesty, with no exaggeration or complaint, just a straightforward recounting of life as it was. Listening to him, he felt a mix of sadness and admiration, realizing how isolated he could have been in a similar position. If circumstances had been different, time passed unnoticed as they talked. The small alley seemed to shrink around them, the outside world fading away. He realized how rare moments like this were, where strangers connected without pretense, where simple gestures could mean everything. He felt grateful for the chance encounter, understanding that life often presented lessons in unexpected forms. The $2 he had spent seemed insignificant at first, but now it had led him to a moment of quiet reflection and shared humanity. The trinket in his pocket felt like a symbol of the choice to pay attention, to engage, to notice the small details that carried great weight. The man reached for his dog, petting it gently, and told a small story of how the dog had been a companion through difficult times. Listening to the story, he felt a warmth spread in his chest. He realized that life was not only about hardship, but about the connections, however small, that made existence meaningful. He asked the man about his plans for the day, and the man shrugged, admitting there was little to plan, yet hope remained in small ways. They spoke about food, the weather, and the little things that most people overlooked, but mattered deeply to someone living with limited means. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they had known each other for years, though they had just met. Eventually, the man mentioned a small opportunity, a chance to earn a few dollars by helping a neighbor with a task. It was not much, but it was enough to make a difference in his day. He listened and offered to accompany him, wanting to see the situation for himself. As they walked together, he noticed the care with which the man approached life, the patience and persistence despite limited resources. It was a lesson in humility and strength, a quiet reminder that courage often lay in enduring each day with dignity. The task itself was simple, moving a few boxes, carrying water, and assisting with small repairs. Yet it became meaningful through shared effort and the silent acknowledgement of mutual respect. During the task, a few neighbors emerged, curious and welcoming. They greeted the man warmly, appreciating his help and his presence. He watched and felt a sense of belonging, a quiet understanding that even small contributions mattered. The man smiled at him, and they exchanged a look that conveyed gratitude without words. He realized that he had witnessed something significant, a slice of life that many overlooked. It was in these ordinary actions, unnoticed by the larger world, that meaning resided. The $2 purchase had led him here, to this moment of quiet revelation and connection. After the work was done, they sat together on the steps of a small porch. The sun had begun to lower in the sky, casting long shadows and painting the world in warm tones. They shared a simple meal, a small loaf of bread and some fruit, and talked quietly about their days. The man spoke about memories, both joyful and painful, and he listened intently, feeling a sense of humility and respect. He realized that every person carried stories, burdens, and hopes, and that understanding them required attention, patience, and empathy. The $2, so small, brought him to a moment of understanding that could not be measured in coins or currency. As the evening approached, he knew it was time to leave. The man thanked him for spending time together, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude in return. He had come to learn more about life, about people, and about himself. He walked away slowly, carrying the lessons of the day in his mind and heart. The street seemed quieter now, the world softer and more profound. Every sound, every movement felt connected to the experiences he had shared. He realized that life was not only about large moments or grand achievements, but about noticing, engaging, and caring for the small threads that wove the fabric of existence. He paused at a small bridge overlooking a narrow stream, watching the water flow steadily, carrying leaves and small twigs downstream. The motion was simple, yet it reflected a continuity that mirrored life itself. He thought about the man and his dog, about the effort, the resilience, the quiet hope that persisted even in difficult circumstances. The encounter had changed something within him, a subtle shift that he could not yet fully articulate. He understood that attention and kindness, even in small measures, could ripple outward in ways unseen but deeply felt. As darkness began to settle, he continued home, reflecting on the events of the day. He considered the $2 purchase, trivial as it seemed, and recognized how it had guided him to unexpected experiences, meaningful encounters, and new insights. The ordinary streets and familiar corners had become extraordinary through observation, presence, and action. He realized that moments of reckoning often arrived in subtle forms, disguised as small decisions, casual choices, or unexpected encounters. The day had reminded him that life, in all its complexity, could be appreciated more fully when one paid attention to the details and embraced its connection with others. When he returned to his room, he sat quietly by the window, the trinket in his hand once more. He examined it and felt a quiet satisfaction, not because of its material value, but because of what it had represented. It had been a doorway, a key to noticing, learning, and participating in life more intentionally. He placed it carefully on the windowsill where the fading light could touch it, and he leaned back, reflecting on the unexpected richness of a day that had begun with such a simple act. He realized that every choice, no matter how small, could hold significance, and that awareness and empathy were treasures worth cultivating every day. The $2 had opened a door, and he felt grateful to have stepped through, ready to see where the path would lead next. The next morning, he woke up with a sense of restlessness that he could not explain. The previous day lingered in his mind. The small alley, the man and his dog, the simple work they had shared, and the quiet lessons that had slipped into his heart. He made a cup of coffee slowly, taking in the smell and warmth, feeling a strange anticipation for the day ahead. It was as though the world had subtly shifted overnight, and he could feel it in the air. In the light coming through the window, and in the rhythm of his own heartbeat, he decided to take a longer walk than usual, following streets he had never explored. Each turn brought new sights, old houses with cracked paint, children playing quietly in the yards, and neighbors greeting one another with smiles. He observed carefully, noticing details that often went unseen. A small garden with flowers growing wild, a cat perched on a fence, an elderly man tending to a lawn. He felt a connection to all of it, a sense that life was full of small moments that mattered, that carried weight if one only paid attention. As he walked, he noticed the man from the alley sitting on a bench outside a small convenience store. He had his dog with him again, and they seemed to settle into the routine of the day. He approached slowly, not wanting to intrude, but the man looked up and nodded, inviting him to sit. They exchanged greetings, and he felt a familiar warmth, the ease of recognition from the day before. He realized that moments of genuine human connection were rare, and that this simple interaction had a meaning beyond explanation. The man began to talk about his life in more detail, about challenges he faced, the small struggles and victories that made up each day. He spoke of money, of jobs that came and went, of the uncertainty that often clouded his existence. Yet beneath the hardship was resilience, a determination to keep moving forward despite limited resources. Listening, he felt a mixture of admiration and empathy, understanding that life often required quiet strength more than loud achievements. He shared his own thoughts as well, reflecting on the small purchase from the previous day and the way it had opened his awareness to the lives around him. The man asked about his plans, and he admitted that he had none, just a desire to walk and observe. To understand more about the world, they decided together to visit a nearby market, a place bustling with activity where people sold fruits, vegetables, and other goods. As they walked, he observed how the man moved carefully, intentionally, noticing the small interactions between vendors and customers. Each gesture carried meaning. Each smile and nod reflected relationships built over time. He realized that ordinary actions held significance when seen through attention and understanding at the market. They helped a vendor carry a few baskets of produce from a delivery cart to the stall. The work was simple but necessary, and the gratitude from the vendor was evident. He felt the importance of being present, of offering assistance without expectation of reward. The man shared stories of people he had helped before, small acts of kindness that had made a difference in someone else's day. Listening, he felt a growing sense of purpose, a realization that meaningful moments often arose from the simplest actions, the most ordinary choices as they moved through the market. He noticed a young boy struggling to reach a basket of fruit. Without thinking, he stepped forward and lifted the basket down for the boy. The child thanked him quietly, and he smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. He realized that the world was full of opportunities to help, to connect, and that even small gestures mattered. The $2 trinket he had purchased the day before seemed to carry a symbolic weight, reminding him of attention, awareness, and engagement with the world. They walked further, past crowded stalls and street performers, and came to a small open space where people were gathered. Someone had dropped a wallet, and no one seemed to notice. The man and he saw it together, and he instinctively picked it up, calling out to the person it belonged to. A young woman ran back, relieved and grateful, and he felt the satisfaction of doing something right, of preventing harm. He noticed how small actions could have a ripple effect, how awareness and honesty could change outcomes for others. After the small incident, they found a quiet spot to sit and rest. The man shared more about his life, including moments of regret and missed opportunities, but also moments of pride and quiet joy. He listened intently, reflecting on his own experiences and understanding that life was a balance of small decisions, choices that shaped the path forward in ways often unseen. He thought about the $2 purchase again, realizing it had sparked a chain of events leading him to notice, participate, and engage more deeply with life. Time passed, and the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the market. He realized that he had been walking and observing for hours, yet it had felt like minutes. The man's presence had grounded him, showing him that human connection, attention, empathy were more valuable than any material gain. He understood that life often offered lessons in subtle ways, disguised as small decisions, ordinary purchases, or chance encounters. As they prepared to leave the market, the man mentioned a nearby community center where people volunteered to help others in need. He suggested they visit, not out of obligation, but to see if there was something they could do together. He agreed, feeling a sense of purpose and curiosity. Walking toward the center, he noticed the way the man interacted with others, quietly observing, assisting where needed, offering words of encouragement, and comfort. He realized that dignity and kindness were often expressed in the smallest actions, unnoticed by many but deeply felt by those who experienced them at the community center. They helped sort donations, pack food bags, and prepare small care packages for families in need. Each task was simple, yet the impact was significant. He saw the relief on the faces of those receiving help, the gratitude in their eyes, and felt a profound connection to the work. He realized that life was full of opportunities to make a difference, and that attention, presence, and action mattered more than anything else. The man shared stories of people who had once received help and later returned to offer assistance to others. He understood that kindness could spread, creating ripples that extended far beyond a single moment. While working, a young woman approached, asking for advice on managing a difficult situation. He listened carefully, offering thoughtful words based on the lessons he had learned over the past 2 days. She thanked him, and he felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense that even small guidance could provide comfort and clarity. He realized that the world was full of these moments, waiting for someone to notice, to respond, and to make a difference in ways that were often invisible but meaningful. After finishing their tasks, they sat outside the community center, watching the people leave with food and supplies. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, the day drawing to a close. He felt a sense of fulfillment, a quiet joy in having participated, however modestly, in the lives of others. The man turned to him, smiling faintly, and he understood without words that the day had been significant for both of them. They had shared effort, attention, and connection, experiencing a moment of reckoning that neither could fully articulate, but both could feel as they walked back toward the familiar streets. He reflected on the events of the day. The $2 purchase had seemed insignificant at first, a trivial act in an ordinary morning. Yet it had led him to encounters, experiences, and realizations that changed his awareness and perspective. He understood that life offered subtle lessons, often hidden in small moments, casual decisions, and chance meetings. Awareness, empathy, and action, no matter how small, could create ripples that extended far beyond what could be seen or measured. By the time he reached his room, the sky was dark, and the streetlights cast a soft glow on the pavement. He sat by the window, the trinket from the purchase resting beside him. He reflected on the man, the alley, the market, and the community center. Each moment had been ordinary in its surface details, but extraordinary in meaning and impact. He realized that the world was full of opportunities to notice, to care, and to participate in the lives of others. Even the smallest gestures carried significance, and attention to these moments created a sense of connection and purpose. He thought about tomorrow, wondering what small actions might lead to meaningful experiences. The $2 had started a chain of events that revealed the quiet power of attention, empathy, and engagement. He understood that life was not always dramatic or extraordinary in obvious ways, but it held richness in subtle, overlooked details. He felt a sense of gratitude for the chance to witness, participate, and reflect. The day had been a revelation, showing him that meaning often arrived in unexpected forms and that moments of reckoning could appear quietly, disguised as small decisions, ordinary encounters, or chance opportunities to act with care. The morning air was cool as he stepped outside, feeling the gentle breeze on his face. The events of the past days lingered in his mind, the encounters, the conversations, and the lessons he had absorbed quietly. He realized that the small $2 purchase had set a ripple in motion, a ripple that had carried him into experiences that mattered in ways he could not have imagined. He walked down familiar streets with new eyes, noticing the textures of buildings, the sounds of children playing, the chatter of neighbors, and the simple rhythm of everyday life. Each detail seemed alive, full of meaning when observed attentively. He decided to visit the alley again, curious to see if the man and his dog would be there. As he approached, he saw the man working on a small repair for a neighbor, moving slowly and deliberately, focused on the task. The dog lay nearby, watching quietly. He felt a sense of anticipation and a quiet respect for the way the man carried himself. Their eyes met, and a small smile passed between them, a recognition of shared understanding and connection. He joined him without words, offering to help with the task, feeling a sense of purpose and engagement. Together, they worked on fixing a broken fence, carrying wood and hammering nails carefully. The work was simple, yet the rhythm of effort and cooperation brought a quiet satisfaction. He noticed how the man worked with patience and precision, a reflection of resilience and care. He realized that ordinary actions, when done with attention and intention, carried weight and meaning. Each strike of the hammer, each careful placement of a plank, was a small act of contribution, a reminder that life was shaped by effort. However humble, as they worked, neighbors came and went, exchanging greetings and acknowledging the effort being made. Some offered words of thanks, others simply nodded, but the acknowledgement felt genuine. He observed these interactions, understanding that even small gestures of recognition could make a significant difference in someone's day. The $2 spent days before had led him here to this experience, showing him that life often presented lessons in subtle ways. Through the smallest acts of awareness and participation, during a brief pause, the man shared stories of the neighborhood, of families helping one another, of moments of kindness that went unnoticed by most. He listened attentively, feeling the depth of the quiet connections that held the community together. He realized that life was not only about personal achievements or material gains, but about engagement, empathy, and the willingness to act for the benefit of others. The $2 trinket he had purchased seemed to symbolize a doorway to this awareness, a reminder that attention and action mattered more than wealth or status. A young boy approached, curious about the work, and the man invited him to help carry a small plank. He watched as the child took part, learning through action and observation, and he felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that meaningful experiences were often shared, built through cooperation, and that the act of helping created ripples that extended beyond immediate results. Even small efforts had impact, shaping understanding and instilling values quietly and effectively. After finishing the repair, damed up the area and gathered tools. The man suggested visiting a nearby park, a place where people often gathered, shared stories, and helped one another. He agreed, feeling that each step of the day continued the lessons that had begun with the trivial purchase. Walking together, he observed the interactions of strangers, small acts of kindness, the unnoticed efforts that contributed to the fabric of life. He understood that connection, attention, and care were the true measures of meaningful existence. At the park, they joined a small group preparing food for those in need. He observed the rhythm of collaboration, the way each person contributed, and the gratitude expressed by those receiving assistance. He participated actively, carrying boxes, arranging supplies, and distributing meals. Each gesture felt significant, a tangible demonstration of care and attention. The man guided him gently, showing that even simple contributions could create a sense of purpose and connection. While distributing food, he noticed a young woman struggling with a baby in several bags. He stepped forward to offer help, carrying the bags and ensuring she could manage the child safely. Her gratitude was evident, her relief tangible, and he felt the satisfaction of making a small but meaningful difference. The experience reinforced his understanding that life was composed of countless small moments, each with potential significance if one chose to act with awareness and care. Afterward, they sat on a bench, observing the people who had received assistance, noting the subtle expressions of relief, appreciation, and quiet joy. The man spoke softly about the importance of attention to the needs of others, explaining that even minor acts could create lasting impact. He reflected on the past days, recognizing the journey from a trivial purchase to profound awareness. The $2 had become more than money. It was a catalyst, a symbol of engagement, empathy, and the power of observation. Time passed, and the park began to empty. The sky shifted, casting a warm glow over the scene. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, understanding that purpose was not measured in wealth or status, but in actions that contributed to the lives of others. He realized that his perspective had shifted fundamentally. that he now approached life with greater awareness and appreciation for the subtle significance of everyday moments. As they walked back through familiar streets, he noticed details previously overlooked. The way a shopkeeper arranged goods carefully, the neighbor helping carry groceries, the laughter of children, and the quiet gestures of attention that connected people in unseen ways. He felt a sense of gratitude for the chance to observe, participate, and reflect. Life had revealed itself through ordinary acts, subtle interactions, and shared effort, each contributing to a growing understanding of the world. Reaching his room, he sat quietly by the window, the trinket in his hand. He examined it, recognizing its symbolic weight. The way a small purchase had opened a doorway to attention, empathy, and engagement. He thought about the people he had met, the actions taken, and the quiet impact of ordinary efforts. He understood that life offered lessons in subtle forms. That meaning often arrived disguised as trivial choices or chance encounters, and that attention and action were the keys to experiencing it fully. He placed the trinket on the windowsill, letting the fading light touch it, and reflected on the ripples created by the $2 purchase. He felt a sense of quiet anticipation for the days ahead, aware that life would continue to offer lessons, connections, and moments of reckoning in ways that were often subtle, yet profoundly meaningful. He realized that even small gestures, decisions, and acts of attention could transform ordinary days into experiences rich with insight and understanding. The day had shown him that life was composed of countless threads, woven together through awareness, empathy, and action, creating a fabric of meaning that extended beyond the self. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow across the room. He awoke with a sense of quiet anticipation, a feeling that today might hold more lessons and insights than the days before. He made a cup of coffee, savoring the aroma and warmth, and sat by the window, observing the streets below. People moved about their routines, some hurrying, some lingering, and he noticed every detail with a mindfulness that had grown over the past days. He reflected on the small purchase, the encounters, and the experiences that had opened his eyes to the subtle ways life could carry meaning. He decided to walk through a part of the city he had seldom visited, curious about what he might discover. The streets were alive with activity, the sounds of conversations, footsteps, and distant traffic blending together. He noticed a small bakery with fresh bread cooling on the windowsill, a child chasing a dog down a narrow alley, and an elderly man sitting quietly on a bench watching the world pass by. Each moment seemed to hold significance, a reminder that life was composed of countless small experiences, each worthy of attention. As he walked, he saw the man from the alley again, helping a neighbor carry supplies. The dog trotted alongside, its tail wagging. He approached, and the man greeted him with a nod and a faint smile. They walked together, sharing the simple rhythm of moving through the city, observing and engaging with the world around them. The man spoke softly about how small gestures, when repeated, could create lasting impact. He shared stories of neighbors helping one another, acts of kindness that often went unnoticed but made a real difference in people's lives. They stopped at a park, where volunteers were preparing meals for those in need. He joined them, arranging food, handing out supplies, and assisting wherever needed. He noticed the gratitude in the eyes of those receiving help, the quiet smiles, the nods of appreciation, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Each task, no matter how small, carried meaning. He understood that contributing, paying attention, and acting with intention were more valuable than grand gestures or wealth. The lessons of the past days had crystallized into awareness and purpose. While distributing meals, he observed a young man struggling to manage a cart full of groceries. Without hesitation, he stepped forward to help, lifting a few bags and steadying the cart. The young man thanked him, relief evident in his voice and expression. In that moment, he felt the weight of his actions, understanding that even the smallest assistance could have a ripple effect. He recalled the $2 purchase, once trivial, now a symbol of awakening, a reminder that paying attention to the world could open doors to meaningful engagement. After the work, they sat on a bench, the sounds of the city around them fading into a comfortable background hum. The man spoke of resilience, the way people endured challenges quietly, finding strength in community and small acts of support. He listened intently, realizing that life was a tapestry of these moments. Each connection, each gesture, forming threads that bound people together. He reflected on his own life, understanding that meaningful experiences were often found not in grand achievements but in participation, awareness, and empathy. A young child approached, curious about the work they had been doing. The man encouraged the child to help, guiding their small hands to arrange supplies. He watched, feeling the quiet power of learning through action and observation. He understood that lessons were often passed on in subtle ways, through participation, presence, and attention. Life unfolded in these ordinary yet significant moments, each contributing to understanding, connection, and growth. As the afternoon progressed, they walked through a quieter neighborhood, observing the interactions of neighbors. The small acts of attention that kept the community functioning. He noticed a woman helping an elderly man cross the street, a group of children playing and sharing toys, and a shopkeeper offering a kind word to a passerby. Each sight reinforced the idea that life was composed of countless unnoticed actions, each with the potential to impact others profoundly. The $2 he had spent days before now seemed like a key that had unlocked awareness, compassion, and engagement. They stopped near a small river, watching leaves float downstream, the water moving steadily, silently. He reflected on the past days, the encounters, and the experiences that had brought him to this moment. He realized that meaning was found in connection, observation, and participation, in the willingness to notice and respond. The world held countless opportunities for these small but significant acts, waiting for attention and action. He felt a sense of gratitude for the experiences and the lessons they had imparted. The man shared one final story about a neighbor who had once received help and later returned the kindness in unexpected ways. He understood that actions, no matter how small, created ripples, shaping lives and communities over time. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, recognizing that the chain of events that began with a trivial purchase had led to meaningful engagement, reflection, and understanding. The world was alive with possibility, and he was now more attuned to its subtle lessons and quiet significance. As evening approached, they walked back through familiar streets, the city bathed in the soft glow of sunset. He noticed the way shadows stretched, the golden light reflected off windows, the gentle movements of people going about their routines. He felt a sense of completion, a quiet joy in having participated, observed, and learned. The $2 purchase had started a journey, revealing the importance of attention, empathy, and action. He understood that life offered meaning in unexpected ways, often through the smallest decisions, interactions, and gestures. Back in his room, he sat by the window, the trinket from the purchase resting beside him. He held it in his hand, feeling its weight, not in monetary value, but in the significance it had carried. He reflected on the people he had met, the actions taken, and the lessons learned. He realized that life was composed of threads woven together by awareness, empathy, and participation, and that even small gestures could create lasting impact. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and he felt a sense of readiness to approach the days ahead with intention and presence. He placed the trinket carefully on the windowsill, letting the last rays of sunlight touch it, and took a deep breath. The journey that began with a simple $2 purchase had led to encounters, understanding, and transformation. He felt grateful for the subtle awakening, for the recognition that life was rich with meaning when observed, engaged with, and approached with care. He understood that the ripple of small actions, attention, and empathy extended far beyond what he could see, shaping lives, communities, and his own perspective in ways that would continue to unfold over time. The day began quietly with the soft light of dawn filling his room. He woke with a sense of anticipation, not knowing exactly what would unfold, but feeling ready for anything. The experiences of the past days lingered in his mind, the lessons of awareness, empathy, and engagement shaping the way he saw the world. He made coffee slowly, taking in the aroma, and sat by the window observing the streets below. Each movement of people, each sound, each shadow seemed more vivid than before. He realized that the $2 purchase had been a small spark, but the journey it started had opened a window to a life full of subtle yet meaningful moments. He decided to explore a part of the city he rarely visited. Streets he had once ignored, now seeming alive with possibility. As he walked, he noticed details he had never seen before: the curve of old walls, the pattern of light on pavement, the rhythm of people moving about their day. A woman carried groceries, carefully balancing bags in each hand. A child ran after a ball, laughing. A man helped a neighbor lift a chair. Each sight reminded him that life was full of moments often unnoticed, yet full of significance. He found himself drawn to a small community garden tucked between buildings. People were working together, planting seeds, watering young plants, and clearing weeds. He approached quietly, observing the care and attention given to each task. A man noticed him and nodded, inviting him to join. Without hesitation, he began helping, carrying watering cans, clearing stones, and arranging soil. The work was simple yet satisfying, and he felt a connection with those around him, a shared purpose that needed no words while working. A young boy approached, struggling to carry a small bucket of water. He stepped forward and took it gently from him, setting it in place near a plant. The boy looked up with wide eyes and smiled shyly. He realized that even small assistance could create a sense of confidence and belonging. Life was made up of these tiny gestures, each with the potential to influence someone in ways he might never know. The people in the garden began talking among themselves, sharing stories of how the space had helped them find peace and connection. An elderly woman spoke of times she had felt isolated and how tending the plants had given her a sense of purpose. He listened, understanding that the smallest places and simplest acts could carry deep meaning. The $2 trinket, which had seemed insignificant at first, now felt symbolic of attention, action, and the unforeseen power of small decisions. A stray dog wandered into the garden, timid and cautious. He knelt down and extended his hand slowly. The dog sniffed before approaching and allowed him to gently pet it. The man in the garden explained how the animal had been abandoned, but found comfort among those who cared. He realized that compassion extended beyond people, that empathy for all living beings could enrich life in ways he had never considered. Even unnoticed acts of kindness could have lasting effects. Time passed unnoticed as he worked and observed. The rhythm of planting, watering, and tending created a sense of flow. Conversations with others were soft but meaningful, sharing experiences, struggles, and small victories. He felt a quiet joy in these simple interactions, understanding that human connection often arose in ordinary settings and through small gestures. They moved to clean a nearby path overgrown with weeds. He noticed a young girl struggling to carry a bundle of branches. He offered help, carrying half the load alongside her, and she laughed, relieved by the shared effort. He realized that participation and presence were as meaningful as any grand action. Its showing up mattered more than recognition or reward. The day reinforced the lesson that life was composed of countless moments where attention and action created significance. After finishing the work, they all sat together on a bench, sharing water and snacks. People exchanged stories of challenges and triumphs, moments of loneliness and times of joy. He felt the depth of human experience in the quiet exchanges. Recognizing that empathy was strengthened through listening and engagement, the $2 purchase had been the first step toward noticing the richness of life, and he now understood how each decision could lead to deeper awareness and participation. A neighbor approached, asking for help to carry a box of supplies to a nearby shelter. He and the man from the alley volunteered, lifting the box carefully and carrying it to the shelter. Inside, volunteers were sorting clothes and food. He assisted, arranging items, listening to instructions, and observing how coordinated effort created meaningful results. He realized that impact did not need to be large. Even small contributions made a difference when done with care and attention. While at the shelter, he noticed a young mother struggling to calm a child while managing a bag of belongings. He approached and offered help, carrying the bag to a safe space. She thanked him quietly, relief evident in her expression. He felt the quiet power of action and presence. understanding that being attentive to the needs of others created ripples that extended far beyond the immediate moment. The journey from a small purchase to awareness and engagement continued to unfold after leaving the shelter. They walked along a narrow street toward a quiet park. The evening sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. People were walking, playing, and talking, each absorbed in their own routines. He observed, carefully noticing interactions, small acts of kindness, and the subtle ways people supported one another. Each sight reinforced his understanding that life was composed of connections often hidden but deeply meaningful.